So we've got 1 hour now that we're going to spend together. We'll take a 30-minute break and we'll come back for a second hour. What I'm proposing during the first hour, I will share as much as I can with you. And then after the break for the second hour, we will have, let's say, open discussions, questions, responses, and a perfect opportunity for everybody to share opinions, etc. So I have, over the last few months, I've done a lot of work on understanding both the implications and the challenges related to implementing cyber and information security systems within a 145. And it's an interesting project. I've got a short presentation here, which I will go through. And then I'll show you where we have located a number of documents which are free to access that will help you. Something just to say about this entire experience of implementing a process that is going to essentially connect cyber and information security risk processes, challenges, etc., into the existing safety management system and quality or compliance management system. So there are a lot of challenges. The first one is the more time that you spend understanding the dimension of the challenge that we face, the more you will start to appreciate how many man hours are required. So, and here's one of the challenges again. It doesn't matter if your 145 organization has 30, 50, 100 or 500 employees. Essentially, it's the same amount of work. So pro rata, it can be more challenging for smaller organizations because of the amount of work that they're going to be faced with. So it's important to get ahead of this and to understand how you can position yourself in the best way. As you probably will be aware, it's mandatory from February next year within the 145. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the 145. We receive lots and lots of questions about other subjects not connected with what we're talking about today. We're always happy to receive emails, questions. We have a LinkedIn group where we can discuss things, but definitely the purpose of today is to focus on 145. And so that's what we're going to do. Questions like, how do I audit a safety management system? These are for another day. They're super interesting questions and we have answers, but in this limited time that we have available, we want to focus on the 145, which is what we promised everybody that we would do. Okay, as you may be aware, we are recording this and we will make this presentation available on YouTube in two parts. Part one, this is part one, and part two. So I hope that you will find it of benefit. Okay, let's look at what we've got here. I'll just move this guy out of the way for me. Right. So we know, of course, without it being pointed out, that we're in a high value environment, and for sure we are targets for any of the, let's say, nefarious minded people, cyber criminals, state actors, etc. Anybody who really has a desire can do bad. And so that's part of the challenge that we face. So you might ask, why is EASA getting involved in not just recommending, but mandating? Means that from February next year, any 145 organization can be audited, can be found to have discrepancies, and could be, for example, given a time frame to rectify the discrepancies. And if the organization did not address the discrepancies in a way that the regulatory authority expected, could actually lose the approval. So the approval can be in jeopardy. So it's not something that is, oh, by the way, we need to do this. It's something that we need to be able to demonstrate that we are addressing. Now, here's the challenge, or here's one of the challenges. The entire process is not what you would call a compliance process. Anytime that you're looking at risk, you're looking at subjectivity, you're looking at performance behaviors, and as such, it's more challenging for a regulatory authority to actually audit a performance-based system. But stepping back from this, we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing it? And understand that there is indeed all manner of exposures. Imagine if, for example, you lost access to your server or your website information, or somehow your protocols were corrupted by third parties who you'd given access to. So it could disrupt, or worse, it could absolutely cause a hole. So what we're going to go through these slides, we're just going to understand the dimension of the challenge that we face. I asked the question, why is EASA mandating it? Well, part of the reason is that EASA has to demonstrate that they are compliant with the ICAO standard and recommended practices. And Annex 17 is a requirement, a recommendation rather, for a information and cybersecurity process or system. And so that's the background. Now, just to continue with the potential for being audited, I don't expect on the 1st of March 2026 there'll be a knock on your door and the competent authority is going to be there expecting you to have everything in place. It doesn't work like that. It didn't work like that with safety management system. There will be a period of time during which the system can be bedded in, and you'll start to understand how you're going to make it work for your organization. But it will require process procedures developing. It will require certain people to have deeper training. It'll require reporting systems. And maybe as a result of this, some of your, let's say, internal systems for managing information security, you will address. I actually, personally, I'll be very surprised if you don't address many issues following this in terms of, let's say, system security and so on. Okay, what we're talking about, maintenance management systems, we're talking about anything that is in a digital form, records, operational data, communication systems, anything that is digital in form is susceptible to, let's say, foul play of some description. So we talk about malware. And malware, of course, is where a malicious virus or ransomware or spyware is placed on any of our systems. So how would you know if somebody who was, let's say, plugging in a thumb drive into one of the computers on your network without knowing that there was malware on the thumb drive, and that malware now is on your system and it does whatever it's been programmed to do? Now, I've been to organizations where the thumb drives simply don't work because they've been disabled on every single machine in the organization's system. So different organizations take a different approach, but viruses, ransomware, where your system is locked up until you pay a ransom. Typically, you've got to send a Bitcoin or another currency, and you then hope that it's going to be released. And there is so much evidence, you can find it yourself, of where these guys have been successful. And nothing breeds success like more success. And so it becomes an absolute business. You've maybe seen it. There's call centers in some countries, and their entire function is to infiltrate and steal from other businesses. That's the reason that they're in business, is to steal from other businesses. It's a shocking world that we live in, but that's the reality. Okay. And sometimes from emails or messages that come in, there are phishing attacks. And depending on what software you use to basically catch these, or depending on what other processes you've got, but absolutely on a daily basis, I see such messages arriving in my inbox. And sometimes they just reference to your order for so-and-so, which you haven't made, by the way. And if you click on it, it will take you to a place you don't want to go. And maybe, who knows what, because of course we don't do it to see what will happen. And so it goes on. And I'm sure you see that as well. So that's just the edge of it. So we've spoke about phishing emails, spoke about fake invoices. I was reading, because, as I say, for a few months, I've been spending a lot of time on this subject, and I've read some amazing things. One of these companies who specialized in stealing managed to get a transfer, believe this or not, 50 million US dollars transferred, because they believed it was a special request from the CEO. They hacked into the CEO's computer, they sent it to their accounts, and it was a specific instruction, and simply they acted on it. And they transferred 50 million US dollars out of the company. And you think it's not possible. It absolutely is. And imagine the motivation you've got now as a rogue actor in another country if you've just won 50 million and you've moved it. They can't recover that money. It's gone. It's disappeared. Okay, so this is some of the challenges. Systemic vulnerabilities arise from inherent weakness in the organization's process, systems, or technology. So these become questions. How resilient is our processes? And you can do this. You can assess the risk of your processes. You can bring in IT to look at your processes, but there's a lot of stuff that you can do yourself. Third-party software vulnerabilities. So a lot of cyber events have come about because of third parties who you've given access to parts of your system. So before you will allow a third party to access any part of your system, what processes will you have in place to validate the third party? How will you audit the third party to demonstrate that they are an okay, in your opinion, in organization, to gain access to any of your systems? They talk about legacy systems and weak authentication systems, access controls. Do you have multi-factor authentication? Or in some cases, I see where computers are even left on, and it's just an open computer that anybody could access. Now, imagine if somebody has installed logging software on it, they're following exactly what's happening, and so on. Okay, supply chain threats. Again, we spoke about this, and through vendors getting into organization systems, different processes. We talk about this Internet of Things. Increasingly, more and more equipment is becoming Wi-Fi enabled or internet enabled. So again, how is this managed and how is it controlled? Okay, general introduction. So some of the regulations to pay attention to. This one, 2023-2003. This is the main one, which is relevant to 145. So this is the one that we've got to pay attention to because it's telling us what we have to do. But this isn't the only one. There are actually links in, I'll show you an area that we can go to, but I'm working on about 25 different documents. And we will see that something that EASA has done is that they reference external and generic information. And we'll see exactly what I mean by that in a moment. Okay, 145 organizations. How we're going to approach the operational, technical, and compliance frameworks. It's going to be different. It has to be different in order to demonstrate compliance. Now, whether you choose to have a standalone information security manual or whether you choose to add to your existing safety management system manual or to your MOE, it's for you to decide. But there is a lot of work to do, and an analysis of the amount of time that has to be spent varied between 800 man hours and 1,500 man hours. So that's a significant piece of work. You're talking about somewhere between one person working solid on the project for 6 months to 9 months. Of course, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and so on. A better way is a project owner and co-opt a number of persons, which we'll touch on in a minute. So, integrate information security management systems into the overall management system. Identify, assess, and mitigate risks. So we've got this entire process of understanding risks. And now here's the link. Align with international standards like ISO 2701 while addressing aviation specific needs. So what EASA is doing is saying, we're not going to give you a detailed list of what to do. We're going to say, have a look at ISO 2701 and comply with the standards. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point and I'm going to go into exactly that. And first of all, I'm going to share a cybersecurity checklist for 145. Okay, close that down. So what we've got here is a document which is available on the Sofema download area. And What this does is just a simple check sheet that you can reference to see how you're getting on. So it talks about different areas, threat identification and assessment. So you can ask yourself, where are we on this? Have we addressed it? Have we looked at the potential for internal threats as well as human error, any other insider possibility? What about the supply chain? What about regular risk assessment? How do we do a risk assessment? What would the risk assessment look like? So these are just the questions to start the conversation. This is not a checklist for ensuring that everything is as it should be. It's a let's say it's a wake-up call as to things that we've got to do. So we've got to understand in depth the regulation 2023-2003. Then we've got to create policies. And of course, these are all organizational specific. What are we going to do for risk management? What happens if there's an incident? How will we manage the incident? What will the incidents look like? If you remember some of the incidents that have happened to different organizations, it can absolutely bring them to their knees. I've seen it where an organization has had to close down for some days because simply they can't function until they've cleaned and started again, basically, with their IT systems. Okay, Information Security Management Manual or part thereof of another document. Again, you will decide. Now, what we're going to do in terms of roles and responsibilities. Who is going to assume the lead role? In a larger organization, we're going to have IT people that we can call on. We may have security people that we can call on, safety management system people that we can call on, but the exposures are all quite different. Here's a challenge. I've been involved in implementation of some quite large IT systems from the regulatory compliance side. And what I know is when you start talking about detailed functionality of a system, the IT guys are not very knowledgeable. They know how the hardware's plugged together. They know how the data travels, but they don't understand the nature, purpose, and function of that data. There is a disconnect. And that's why we need to bridge that disconnect. So what we see then is that to answer the whole story, we need to bring a competent group of people together, which is why we talk about the competency requirements. We talk about training, but training is not one size fits all. It depends on your role within the organization as to what training you should do. Okay, implementation of technical controls, how we're going to put, let's say, mechanisms in place to validate whether you're a vendor or with building firewalls or something of this nature. We also need to look at how we're going to deal with incident response and management. Are we going to connect this into our safety management reporting system? If we are, how are we going to encourage people to use it? Because this is one of the challenges that we have. And then we talk about continuous monitoring and auditing. How are we going to audit? What are we going to audit? Because there's a big difference between doing a compliance audit and doing a performance audit for the effectiveness of the system. So one of them is, let's call it a compliance-driven audit, and the other one is a safety management system-driven audit. And then, of course, annual reviews. So that's a very good checklist. Just as a a discussion, if you like. If you're sitting around the table talking about what it is we're going to do and how we're going to set it up, that's a good place to start. Now, you saw that, and here's another checklist. So this time it's a check, again, it's available in the Sofema download area, but this checklist is for ISO 27001. Now you saw that EASA flipped us over to this because they're not doing it all themselves. Now, we can't go through this the way we went through the 145. Why? Because there is far too much. And that's the point of this checklist, to see how much information and the different aspects that we're going to have to go through. And for each one of these, we should be able to say, where is that? How can, and create an audit question from it. How can I demonstrate the management commitment to information security? Where is it documented? Okay, it's written here. Okay, how can I show through evidence that we're doing it? That's just one. Who's responsible for assets? How do we classify? How do we label assets? What do we mean by assets? Well, every piece of hardware that carries data is considered an asset for this purpose. So it carries on. You can see that it's a huge story, this one. It's several pages. So it's not something we can go into in any depth now. Just to talk here about threat identification. How are we going to do it? Where are we going to document it? How are we going to manage it? Because imagine that, okay, time's gone by now. The competent authority has allowed you some months, and it comes and audits you. And just on this area here, it says to you, okay, show me the process that you have in place to manage threat identification. Show me where you're doing your vulnerability assessments. Show me your risk analysis and evaluation. And so it goes on. And you can see how suddenly you have a huge audit finding. I've seen where EASA has done audits on some of my third country clients, and they've given them about 40 findings, and then they stop. They don't stop because that's the end of it. They stop because they don't see any purpose in carrying on. And to be honest, I can see the potential for a lot of audits of that nature here. Means there's a lot of work to do. Now, if I was a compliance manager in a 145, this basic checklist, I would want to make sure that I could answer every one of these points. And believe me, when we get down to it, there is a lot of points. And this is the last page of it. Are responsibilities and procedures for incident managers established? Are change control procedures, and so on and so on. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, but the takeaway from this is there is more documents. I'll just show you one more, and it's this one here, right? So this is where this information is available. So it's available on the just make that a little bit bigger. There we go. A little bit bigger. Okay. It's available on the Sofema website. If you haven't been to the Sofema website, sassofia.com, or you can click directly on to the link there. When you go to the home page, it's there. It's there right on the home page. When you click the library, if you registered, fine. If you're not registered, there's a very quick, and this is part of cyber. We need to put a protection there to stop, actors going into our software. So there is a protection there, but very quick to fix that. And then you get to the library area, and you can see aviation security and cyber security. And what that does then, it gives you access to all of these documents. So we were just talking about the basic checklist. There it is. So you can click on that and you can get the document. Audit checklist for 145. And it goes on. Easy access rules for information security. We'll talk about that in a minute. Integrating into EASA compliant SMS for 145. Frequently asked questions related to cybersecurity implementation. It goes on. Gap analysis checklist. Again, we were talking about this, so there's a gap analysis checklist. What's AMC 2042 all about? You can have a look at that. And we continue to add documents here. So if you ask us a question and we haven't got an instant answer and we discover a document supplies that answer, we'll put that document in the download area. And just to say again, while you have to put your email in, these are free to access, these documents. So we're here to try to help you, to support you, and also to help industry to share information. This is what we're trying to do here. Okay, let's carry on with this now. Right. So we spoke about the regulation. We've linked it to, just have a look. Something's gone adrift now. Just a second. Okay, should be good now. Right. Next. So what we can see here is some of the compliance dates, and you can see that for Part 21J, Part 21G, for aerodromes, their compliance is actually October this year. So they're ahead of the curve. The one we're interested in, and the reason we're here, is this one, 2023-2003. And you can see the 22nd of February is the date that we're supposed to have our systems up and running and live. And again, I don't expect, if you're not 100% on that day, to be penalized. However, if you don't have a lot to show and a system that is, let's say, ready for deployment, you could be in a bad place. Okay, so here we're talking about 27000 information security system, and so a huge amount of information there. And again, if you can't find some documents, usually we can help you. We've got various access to documents. We can help to gain access to the documents. Again, what we're looking at now, and this is slightly different, because before we were talking about 2023 regulation, and now what we're talking about is Part IS. So Part IS is a whole different story. If you're familiar with it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, just search for Part IS, Easy Access Rules, and you will get a huge document with a very, very detailed story in it. There is a huge amount of information on cyber and information security. Step one is to spend some time and familiarize yourself with the information and to understand what you're going to do and what's going to happen. So here we've got some examples of how this is all interconnected. So Part IS focuses on information security risks, and that's across the industry. That's not just, let's say, focused on 145. NIS2 or NIS2 is also connecting it all together, but this is looking at cybersecurity across the entire European Union. This is not just aviation, not just EASA, the entire EU. But what happens now, so we've got ICAO Annex 17 at the top of the story. Then we've got NIS2 creating, let's say, different requirements and obligations, recommended practices, etc. Then we've got Part IS, and then we've got AVSEC, Aviation Security, because, of course, it's a major potential exposure is the aviation security system and every aspect of that the operator is concerned with, and also the maintenance operator, but predominantly the operators. But it all links together. So the next thing to look at then is, here we're talking about trustworthiness, because we've got to try to establish, let's say, a hierarchy of management processes related to our systems. Who's going to get access, what level, what access can you have to the systems, etc. So something to talk about there. Now this one here, if we look here, we'll see we've got Part IS, we've got NIS2, and we've got aviation security. If we talk about maintenance organization, we've got a yes for Part IS. So what that means then is, as well as the document we're already talking about, we need to pay attention to Part IS. And as I said, easy access rules for Part IS. And then it says, for NIS2 and aviation security, what's expected of the maintenance organizations, it says to be determined by the member state. So if I was a 145, I would be asking my regulatory authority for guidance on expectations. Means I would be taking a proactive approach. I'm not waiting for the regulatory authority to tell me what to do. I'm saying, I understand it's your responsibility to advise me under the terms of NIS2 and AVSEC as a maintenance organization. What are your expectations? Please reply. Now, you might not get a reply, but that is a protection, because eventually when you reach the point where you are being audited, you're able to now say, I've been looking for the regulatory authorities to support me, and I've not got the depth of support I'm expecting. Now, this is a huge challenge, not just for industry. This is a huge challenge for the regulatory authorities as well, because they are outside of the outer circle, because they're not working with the systems. They're not working with the IT processes. They're responsible to assess the effectiveness of what you're doing. So it's going to be a major challenge for them to understand how to do what they need to do. But that's a separate story, and that's not a reason for the maintenance organizations to put everything in place in the best possible way. So what do we need? We need, first of all, to get together, the leadership team to get together to identify how we're going to address this, who's going to be the project owner. Without a project owner, I promise you it will not go as well. I've seen it where I've gone to a large meeting and 3 people are given the job of doing something. And as soon as you involve 3 people, it falls, because each person is expecting the other person. However, if a single person is responsible for the entire success of the project, and people then are co-opted and report to this person, and this person reports to the leadership team, it usually goes far, far better. if you are allocated the resources you need, because this is another challenge. Quite often what I see in organizations, the big boss turns around to the compliance manager and said, Charlie, this is your job, get on it. Meanwhile, and bear in mind, we've said 800 to 1500 hours. So the compliance manager doesn't turn around and says, oh, thank goodness. I was wondering what I was going to do for the next 6 months because I don't have very much to do. He is as busy as the day is long. We know this. So again, correctly resourcing a project is essential if it's going to be successful. Okay, let's carry on. Key ingredients of Part IS. So we talk about the basic regulation, and there is a connection with the basic regulation. There's a connection with the 2700, huge amount of information there that's relevant. Also the NIS2 framework, and you can see what we've got there, and how we're going to manage the reporting, who we're going to report to, and what the report is going to, what purpose the reports are going to serve. Okay, set up, implement and maintain a information security management system with potential impacts, define a policy, we spoke about that, identify, assess and manage information security risks. Okay, how are we going to do that? Who's going to sit with the responsibility of that? Now, some organizations might say it's the security manager. Okay, it's an organization choice. But what we're doing, if we say it's the security manager, we're involving the entire organization which functions in connection with the safety management system into another area where it doesn't function. Not normally. Normally, we don't have every business area reporting into the security system. So maybe it's better for the safety management system to take the responsibility for the ISMS with the support of the security management process or manager as a safety expert, as a subject matter expert. But at the end of the day, you will decide. This is the point. We spoke about risk treatment, how the reporting system is going to work, how we're going to manage the risks. And it says here, under the requirements, must adopt a systematic approach. Well, this is what we're already doing in our SMS. So it's just possible that we can read across and we can create an approach that allows us to go through and perform audits looking at threat and risk in different areas of the business, step by step by step, and identifying where we have different exposures. And here is just a table that we can use looking at threat scenarios. And what we would have to do within our organization, we'd have to say, what do we mean? What is high? What is medium? What is low? You'll have to decide on the criteria for that. Because once you've done that, you can then start looking at how we can do a risk assessment process. So some of the potential exposures: unauthorized access to maintenance systems, compromised data, maybe yes, maybe no. The potential for ransomware attacks. We can use different ways. Brainstorming is a very good one because people working together come up with more solutions than individuals. And then looking again at the external risks. Connections with suppliers, camos, or design organizations. So as a 145, maybe we are accessing a camo system. So if there was a breach on the camo system, could that impact our system? We receive emails on a continual basis from the camo system. They have attachments. If we opened up an attachment because it's from a camo who we work with, maybe that attachment has got a malware attached to it. What would stop that happening? And some companies I deal with have got very, very stringent systems already. They have done for a long time. For example, we supply information on Dropbox, and some companies simply will not allow Dropbox. My personal view is it's not a problem, but it's their standard operating procedure that they have these constraints to protect the integrity of their systems. Okay, risk management. So, as we understand, we have the potential for exposure, and we need to be able to take the necessary steps in a systematic, structured way in order to basically position our organization in the best possible place. Okay, a few roles here, and these are just different roles, but it serves a purpose because our Chief Information Security Officer, we need such a person. That doesn't mean you can't say, okay, our safety manager or our compliance manager is also our Chief Information Security Officer. But by looking at this and saying, okay, who's going to be our cybersecurity auditor? Maybe we will train one of our security personnel in auditing techniques, or maybe we will train security, safety and quality in cybersecurity, and so on. The point is, we need to be able to go through all of these different aspects. Penetration tester. This is trying to make sure that our systems are strong and resilient. Okay, so just to talk about a few of the roles then. Accountable manager. He has or she has a number of duties. Establish and promote the information security policy. So it's not just about writing a policy, it's about developing a policy that the organization is going to follow. Also, adequate resourcing for the measures, including tools, training, etc. So we can see here what we expect the accountable manager to do. Just to share with you, a PDF of this program will be, as well as the entire presentation being available on YouTube, you will also be able to have a soft copy of the presentation as well. So that will be provided to you following the event. So you can see expectations of the accountable manager. And then we talk about performance measures. How do we know what we're doing is good? So we need to develop indicators, performance measures, so that we can basically demonstrate to ourselves and others that we're doing it in a good way, in the correct way. Now we talk about nominated post holders. So this could be, for example, the technical director, the base maintenance manager, or another person. And we can see here that they're part of the story as well. Ensure compliance with risk assessment to identify and address information security risks. Why? Because the nominated post holder is responsible for the business area. So as an auditor, it's a completely legitimate question to go to the base maintenance post holder and say, how are you managing your cybersecurity, information security risks? And I expect a detailed answer. I expect him to be able to explain to me how the process is working. If he says, you need to speak to our cybersecurity expert, I say, so you can't answer. He says, no, you need to speak. I say, well, you failed the audit because you were unable to demonstrate that you have sufficient oversight of what's going on. So again, potential exposures. Accurate reporting to internal, external stakeholders, integration of cybersecurity or information security controls into daily operations. And then we have business area managers. So the business area managers typically report to the nominated post holders, and you can see they've also got responsibilities connected to allocating resources and also reporting and managing staff competency. And then we talk about compliance and safety manager. So they can develop and oversee the information security risk assessment process, or we could give it to another person. It's an option. It's not a requirement that they do this. It's a requirement that they're able to engage with the system and audit the system in accordance with their normal functions. But it's not a requirement that they become the, let's say, the chief of the cyber and information security system. Updates to the manual based on performance indicators and incident reviews, if they are indeed the owners of the documentation. There are other options. Then we have a common responsible person. So again, how we identify this common responsible person. This is what I was talking about before when I said a project owner. As the project owner, if I was the common responsible person, it would be my job to glue everything together, to bring everything together, to make sure that each of the stakeholders has the information that they need in order to do what needs to be done. Okay, so refer to basic checklist. We had a look quickly. I showed it you. I told you where it is available to download. Gaps identified. So insufficient integration of systemic vulnerability assessment, lack of a structured process to evaluate supply chain cybersecurity risks. So these are gaps that were created during an assessment of a 145 organization. We now need to conduct a detailed risk assessment, and we're referencing there the information security. Remember we said easy access rules to get access to that. Missing or incomplete documentation, lack of defined amendment process is a possibility. Undefined competency requirement for the different roles. Again, this would be something that the project owner would be looking at, would be building roles, but not only building roles, making sure that we've got training appropriate for the roles. So we talk about role-specific training and training programs. We can have automated vulnerability detection. It depends what software protections we've got in place. Do we have multi-factor authentication systems? Again, options there, depends on what it is. So gaps there. Lack of scenario-based testing for incident response. Inconsistent external reporting mechanisms. So inconsistent reporting is one of the biggest challenges we have with safety management systems in general. And whenever I look at a safety management system within an organization, the first area is to look at the reporting. How many reports were put into the system in the last 12 months? From which area of the businesses did you receive reports? Which area of the businesses didn't submit reports? Is that because there are no problems in that area of the business, or is it for another factor? Let's examine, let's evaluate, let's explain. Because if I don't get any reports from a particular area for a 12-month period, then I would expect no evidence of any disconnects or problems in that area. If we find that there are, then the issue is compounded. One, we have problems. Two, we have a lack of reporting. So again, expecting that we're going to get an effective cyber security system reporting process in place is very dependent on the nature, culture of a particular organization. And so for sure, there'll be challenges there. Limited audit integration into cybersecurity management. So as an auditor, I can only audit against what I see. So if the processes are not mature, I cannot do a mature audit. You saw the document 27001. I think there was about 130 audit check items, and each one would open up into a story. So until we get a mature system, the value of the auditing is going to be minimal. Step one is to build the system so that we have an effective system with integrity. Emerging threats not consistently reassessed, inadequate documentation of improvement initiatives. So again, it's an ongoing story, and how are we going to manage it? How are we going to report on it? And so a lot of work there. Oversight mechanisms for contractors. So we have a vendor assessment system. Have we modified vendor assessment systems to include information security? And what does it look like? There's information there. We can do it. None of this is particularly challenging. And I haven't, to be honest with you, in all the months I've spent studying the subject, I haven't found anything that said, wow, that is going to be so difficult. It isn't. It's not difficult. There's just a lot of elements involved, lots of steps to do, lots of people to get involved, lots of training. And this is for people who are already busy. And therein lies the challenge, not the complexity of the subject matter. It's the challenge of being able to address what needs to be done. Okay. Developing a system of cross-referencing and recording and how that's going to work. And just to share with you, what we've looked at is maybe about 5% of a implementation training for 145, which is now available on our online platform. And there is a discount code here available to the end of March. If you want to do that training, use the discount code CYBER20 for a 20% discount. So it just gives you access to more information, because if you look at that training, I'm not going to spend more time looking at it now, but if you look at that training, you'll see it's gone into a lot of detail of how we can implement it. Also looking at the challenges of smaller organizations, how smaller organizations can address it in the most effective way. It's easier in big organizations. I've worked for some big organizations. I worked for British Airways. I've worked for Virgin Atlantic. And you sit around a table and there's 25, 30 people all engaged on the project. Small organizations, we don't have that luxury. And it's going to fall on the shoulders of the compliance manager, the safety manager, and sometimes that's the same person. So you are the compliance and safety manager of the 145. Oh, and by the way, guess what? You're also going to be the chief of the cybersecurity story. It's possible, you can do it, but you need resource, you need support, you need help. You can be the project focal for sure. Okay, that takes us to the first hour, so we'll stop. And as I said, we'll come back in half an hour. And this time we'll have open discussion, questions, answers. And I'm also very interested on your comments, feedback, etc. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.